Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Urban Legends video. Alright, another one here based on your suggestion. This one has been suggested actually in the past with not just this go around but other past entries as well. So I thought I would finally just talk about it here because it does sound a little bit interesting, although it seems like this particular urban legend, these entities, whatever they are, they're not really necessarily that evil, only in the sense that if you do something to make them mad, then that's where essentially they start taking a bad turn. But otherwise, this particular urban legend, they seem to just mind their own business. And what I'm talking about is the urban legend known as, I guess you could call them the evil gnomes, or in other cases they're known as the gnomes in America, because I'm just going to highlight the ones that are here or known to be here within America. There's others that are out there in the world. I was reading stories about encounters that people have had in Sweden and then also in Switzerland and then some of the South American countries, obviously with like the duende. So if they're the same thing, that's possible. If they're variations of the same thing, that's possible too. So who knows? But in this case, I'm just talking about the urban legends known in this for the United States. I was debating about whether to add this to the cryptid side, but the reason why I included it instead on the urban legends side is because they are so rare to find. In other words, there's a purpose for that too, and I'll explain that here in a few minutes. But because they're so rare, they seem to have taken on an urban legend status. So what is the gnome? The gnome that we have here, the American gnome. Well, essentially, it's like the ones that you see in pop culture. Obviously, with regards to gnomes, they have taken on following of sorts here in the US. I mean, there's that travel company that utilizes the gnome as its mascot. There's all those cute little gnomes that people can place within their gardens. In fact, that's almost a hallmark of sorts. You can't go down any houses, let's say street full of houses nowadays, without seeing these cute little gnomes. There was even that children's show that had to do with gnomes as well, that a lot of children grew up with back in the day. So the idea that stuff like this is known, it's more like a pop culture thing. People just accept the idea of gnomes, but in a friendly way. Now, if you were to ask those very same people, hey, do you know that they exist here in America, like actually do exist, then people would probably give like a cross-eyed look, like wondering what's going on. But for some reason they just accept them as mainly like for marketing purposes, for commercial purposes. It's definitely a-okay. Now, as far as the stories as to how they're here in the US, a popular one that seemed to be everywhere online was that show. I think it was called Monsters and Mysteries in America. I haven't seen that episode though, so I don't have any information on that one. But apparently they chronicle some horrifying encounters from people who had the unfortunate experience of coming across these gnomes. There's a reason for that too, because the whole idea with these gnomes in America is they purposely make themselves as hidden as possible, almost like the Holen folk, the ones that I talked about a couple of while back. These entities, whatever they are, they absolutely make certain that they do not like being seen. They like just being mysterious. They like being hidden. They like being invisible. They go about their own ways. Lots of places still here in America that are untouched, in a sense that they don't have like a civilization, a city, town, anything like that near those areas. So if there is indeed a place where you can have, let's say, a population of these gnomes there, it's always possible. And I'm going to talk about also a race of these things that apparently lives, no doubt, in Wyoming too. So let's talk about first about the the North American side, particularly the Native Americans. They have been there for a long time. There's various names, in fact, that the Native Americans had for these little people. The Comanche apparently referred to these gnomes as the Nunupis. The Cherokees referred to them as the Yumwi, and then some of the others, another variation of it is the Menehune. So these are all races of these tiny gnomes that were encountered in the early Native American days, and where they encountered them, who knows? But they were tales, the Native American culture, tales of this race, of them being able to, I guess, exist with the Native Americans and acknowledge them as being there. So definitely a lot of good history with these gnomes here in America, having that history with the Native Americans from before. The names, the little, I guess you call them co-names that they had, they were referred to as little feet or also baby feet. And sure enough, just like in the cartoons, they lived in mountainous regions, or they lived underground, so they always remained hidden in that manner. Now, as far as what these beings can do, they apparently have magical psychic powers, along with the ability of becoming truly invisible. Like, they absolutely can remain invisible in front of people. And on top of that, if anyone tries to, let's say, come across them and try to pursue them, then they have the ability to do some kind of mental tricks, almost like, I guess you call them, like Jedi tricks of some sort, where they confuse the person that's in their region. How they confuse them, I don't know, or what they make them do as far as being confused, but the idea is, if someone tries to follow them and tries to follow their tracks, and let's say this gnome is aware of this, then they'll focus their mental thoughts on that person and then just confuse them enough to lead them off track. So that way, there's nothing in terms of, let's say, a chance of them being encountered. This also includes periods of memory loss and also of missing time. So that's a little bit more creepier, because imagine, even if, let's say, it's by accident, you come across an area housing these gnomes. Then when that happens, all of a sudden you're in another area and you don't know how you got there. Like, you suddenly think to yourself, okay, why am I here? And then why is there 30 minutes missing with regards to my time? So quite fascinating stuff. Now, as far as proof of these things, there's a very fascinating artifact of some sort that was found, but it's actually gone. And what I mean gone is the sense that it's nowhere to be found now. And it has to do with this interesting thing. It's called the Pedro Mountain mummy. Another word for it is the San Pedro Mountains mummy. And what you're looking at are the known pictures of it. Here's the story associated with it. You have to go back in time to 1932. There were some prospectors, some gold prospectors by the name of Cecil Maine and Frank Carr. There they were in Wyoming, in the Pedro Mountains, hence the name of this mummy, trying to, I guess, blow up certain portions of the mountain to find gold. And when they did so, they discovered a sealed area, a purposely sealed area behind a wall of rock. So, whenever they blasted open that wall, they found a makeshift room inside of it. This was not an accidental room. Like, this was not a room that, for whatever reason, nature accidentally made, either through the passage of time or through other, I guess, nature effects of sorts. No, in this case, this was a purposeful room. And on the inside of that room, tiny room, like imagine a room that, let's say, Yoda would live in, something along those lines, they found this thing. It was 14 inches high. It was mummified, obviously, like long dead, and it was found within the center of this room, cross-legged, and then just sitting there, almost as if it was waiting for someone for it to discover. And when they came across it, they took it with them, and because of the nature of the room itself and the way it was sealed, passage of time essentially meant that it either became mummified or it was mummified itself. Who knows? You know how you hear the tales of the Egyptians where they mummify bodies purposely before they were buried, but in this case, whether it was mummified by the passage of time, that seems like it's most likely. It was studied at several places. In fact, it was studied at the American Museum of Natural History, and then there was another place. I think it was a university of some sort that it was studied as well. And it was found, and you're looking at the x-rays here, that sure enough, it is the actual body of a tiny person, in this case 14 inches high, so much tinier than, let's say, your average little person or your average dwarf. Now, as far as what it was and the reason for its tiny status, there's two variations of it. The more common, I guess, realistic approach is that it's actually, and this is a long one, it's the name, the official term is anencephalic infant, which essentially is an infant that's born without the top part of their brain. That's why it looks like it's caved in. It does happen even to this day. In fact, you're looking at a drawing of what it would have looked like when it was born. It's very rare, but it still happens to this very day. So that's why it has that collapsed top part of its skull, because just through this deformity it was born in this manner, and then whatever the race was back then, because this thing has been dated, carbon dated, and it was dated back to the 1700s, whoever did this decided to then just seal it up right then and there, and then that's through the passage of time became mummified, most likely. So that's one variation of it, that it was a real, in this case, deformity. It's not anything having to do with gnomes. It's just something along the lines of a deformed baby, and then it was sealed up. The other option is that people are stating that no, it's actually proof of the race, in this case of the gnomes, and there's an official name of it. They're called the Nimerigar. I think that's how it's said, but it's the Nimerigar were the little people that were known to frequent that area in Wyoming, having lived there for hundreds of years, and they're still there apparently to this very day. As far as them being there, they again stay completely silent. They stay completely hidden. They do have all the traits associated before that I mentioned about the invisibility, about being able to mess with people's mind if they happen to come across them. They even have apparently a distinct tradition of some sort. If someone is considered almost like an outcast, or if they're considered someone that is not liked within that colony, then they basically get executed, and the way they do so is they receive a smash on top of their head, a fatal one, and that's why it has that look, and then they get buried there. But the people that go with that theory state that it's the body, and you saw the pictures of the whole skeleton, it's the body of an adult, and it's not of an infant. But the people that go with the more realistic approach state that it's because it's an infant. So what variation of it, that's for you to decide. The reason why it's now a little bit harder to tell and do further studying of it, this mummy has its own tale of its own. Apparently it passed through various owners, eventually going to a guy by the name of Leonard Wadler, who was a New York businessman. And then once he came across it, then that was it. He has not made anything known as far as its current whereabouts. He just simply took it legally, of course. It was passed to him, but then that was it. There are others that are trying to find this mummy because they're trying to use it, I guess, maybe as a missing link, or they're trying to dispel or prove certain things related to the gnomes in America. There's even a reward for it. Anyone who is able to track it down, there's a $10,000 reward for being able to know its current whereabouts. So where it's at right now, who knows? But otherwise, the other thing to mention about these gnomes in America, there's the idea again that they're evil. I did not really come across too much information on that. However, when you go to the other parts of the world, especially like I was mentioning earlier in Sweden, there's something called, I think it's has said the tomtar, although I think it's another way to say it is the tomte. I'm not exactly sure, but essentially it's the gnome that you and I have seen all the pictures of within this video. This tiny person with the beard, that's their version of it. Now, the way the legends go there is they too love staying completely invisible, but it's considered very bad luck if you do see one. In fact, if you do see one of these things, they become angered and they seek revenge, because their whole thing is they're actually helpful to people. They make sure, especially if you're a farmer, that they take care of livestock at night. So let's say the farmer and his family, they're asleep, they're not able to truly take care of their livestock at night, and guess what's out at night? Predators. But these gnomes help take care, they help fend off, they help make sure that the livestock is okay. In return, they want to make sure too that the farmers treat their livestock with respect. So if someone, let's say as a farmer there, is inflicting any unnecessary pain or starving the livestock or just making the livestock, obviously eventually some livestock, they get killed to either make food or to make other resources. And it sounds like these Chomtars understand that at least. But if in other ways you still make, let's say, abuse towards the livestock, then that makes them really mad. That makes them really angry. So much so that whenever that happens, they in turn create mischief. They create horrors around the family. They break things. They essentially make sure that the family experiences as much pain as the livestock are feeling from any farmer that's causing abuse towards them. And again, the other in return item is they will take care of everything, but they want to make sure they do not want to be seen. For whatever reason, they are absolutely adamant about it. So if someone as a farmer purposely goes around and, let's say, tries to find these things and it gets seen, then that's when they also do the same thing, as if the same kind of abuse as if the farmer were abusing the animals. And in this case, they just don't want to absolutely be seen. That's the only thing that I saw with regards to anything as far as these gnomes being evil per se. So maybe the ones here in America, the tales that were in that show, maybe that's what occurred. That the people that were there, maybe they came across one, they saw it either on purpose or by accident, and that in turn caused these gnomes to take a more vindictive approach to them. So if someone has more information on that, please post those comments below. It'd be interesting to hear. I want to try to hunt for that video and see if it's shown. If I find it, I'll include a link for it below too. If hopefully it's on YouTube, but otherwise that's all the info that I have. So these gnomes in America, has anyone heard any more information, seen them maybe, even if by accident, although again it's advised not to. If anyone has any more information as far as other types or other states that people have encountered them outside of Wyoming, that would be great to hear too. So alright everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.